Hello and welcome to part 4 of .NET Core Application. And so something that we do a lot, okay, when you're building a .NET Core application, you're probably going to use one of the models for authentication built into the system because, well, it makes a lot of sense. It's already there. It's got roles. It's got information about the users. But you might want more, because the information about the users is limited to what's in that AspNetUsers table. And I'm not going to go through what all that is, but you can look it all up. But it's got information about the password, it's got the email, it's got phone number. So it does have some information in it, but you're probably going to want to extend on that information. So this is about how to do that. You may want other data. Now, I'm not going to go into the other data. One of the things that's not in AspNetUsers table, address. If you want to put address information in there, you've either got to create a separate address table, or you need to extend the AspNetUsers table to include address. And but it's not that hard to do. So we're going to cover how to do that. First things first. To do this, you're going to have to create a model. I'm in part 4. I've already got a models directory. I'm going to create a model named ApplicationUser. And the thing is that a lot of if you look at the tutorials that are out there on how to do this, they do have some things. This reason I'm covering this is because they miss some things. But they recommend that you call the ApplicationUser, and then build that on top of the built-in IdentityUser. And that IdentityUser is in the Microsoft ASP.NET Core identity namespace. So once you've created this public class, and all you do is right-click on Models, Add Class, put the class in there, call it ApplicationUser, go ahead and inherit from IdentityUser, you can now start putting in the fields. Now, I am going to put in more than one field, but for the sake of this video, I only want to start with one field, because I can show you how to do it just as easily with one field as I can with many fields. Now, once you've done that, there are some steps that you need to take. Wherever IdentityUser existed in your code, you now need to make that ApplicationUser. So where are you going to do that? So let's first go into no, we've got here. Now, I just want to make sure you understand this. I've got ApplicationUser class in the models. It's right there. And I want to show where this is actually going to occur. So the first place that I'm going to go to is my programs, C# program piece. And I need to make an update into that program CS file, because, and what you can do to solve this is just do a search on IdentityUser, and wherever you see IdentityUser, you're going to need to do that. So first thing is that I'm going to actually have to also add the namespace for the Grief Heroes, for in my case the models, because that models namespace includes all the information about the actual application user. So kind of important there. So I'm kind of going through this a little slower than I normally would do, but you want to catch all these. Now, one of the places in Program CS you're going to find that IdentityUser is in the Add Default Identity, and I need to change that to ApplicationUser. So that's now going to be changed right here. ApplicationUser is going to get changed. So that's one place. Now, if you're doing a search for the IdentityUser, you're going to make this relatively easy. But where else is this going to show up? I want to cover all the places it's going to show up. So if I go to Pages, and I go to Shared, and I go into Login Partial, in that location. Now, again, here you got slightly, because this is a CSHTML page, you're going to have to use the @using directive, because you're still going to need to put in the Grief Heroes models namespace so that you know that it's there. So you can actually use the term ApplicationUser. But if you look down in here, you're going to find that there is a reference to it in here. I'm actually not going to even bother looking for all of those. It's pretty easy. Well, there's two that's right here, the injects. But you're going to be able to find those if you do a search on IdentityUser, so that you can change those to ApplicationUsers. So these inject directives are going to have to change. Now, you see these less than and greater than brackets around that? That's showing the type. That is typing. Not typing as on a keyboard, but typing as in the type of class that is going to be used in that location. So when you see that and you see identity user in there and you change it to application user, you're just saying that sign-in manager, that typing is going to be using application user rather than identity user. So that's the second place that you need to change it. And then the last place, and I think I only found 3, and it does, and I've been able to compile it, and I've been able to run I've actually been able to create the database. The whole thing is done. The last place that I found it was in the ApplicationDB context file. So let me see, the ApplicationDB context file right here. And again, I had to put the the namespace needs to be there. And I actually did 2 things. I looked at the references, and it did say that you needed to override the on model creating, and then all you do is you call the base. I haven't tried this without doing that. I'm actually going based on, there's no harm in saying putting in the, into this class ApplicationDB context class, which inherits from IdentityDB context application user. There's no harm in putting this method in here on model creating and then just calling the base on model creating with the argument that's passed over. That can't hurt anything. But I haven't tried it without doing it, and in my mind, I see that it's really not doing anything, because all it does when it gets called is it calls the base class. However, there is one place that you need to change this. The IdentityDB context reference that's right here with application user, what it already had, it had identity user in that location. So once that's done, I can go to my package manager. And there's actually 2 things that you're going to do here. Now, I'm going to be adding more fields to my, and I'm going to move this up so you can see it. Okay, that made it worse. I'm going to move this a little bit so you can see it. There's 2 things that I want to go ahead and put that into the database. I'm going to show you the database in just a second. But okay, so what I've done is I've created application user, inherited from identity user. I've been able to add, now I can add fields to my identity model, to my user information class. I also want to be able to migrate it to the database. So I want those things to go over to the database. In this case, I've only got 1 field, which is bio, but that's okay. I'm going to have more fields. And I need to go ahead and add a migration. And I'm calling it user migration, and I call it 01 because I'm actually going to have more than 1, because I am going to go back and add more fields, and I'm going to create a migration for each one that I do. And because the user model is an ApplicationDB context, it's not in Grief Heroes context this time, it's back there in ApplicationDB context, I've got to use the context ApplicationDB context. So now, once you do that, and I've already run it, so I'm not going to run it again. And once you do that, you have to do the update database dash context ApplicationDB context. Using the ApplicationDB context in this case. And what will happen is once you do that, I'm going to go over here to the database and pull the database over here. It's going to go ahead and create the database, and it's going to create it in the location that's specified in ApplicationDB context. And in this case, that database, I'm going to close this, that database itself was not the same as where the database for Grief Heroes context was. They actually have 2 separate connection strings, and they're 2 separate databases here. That isn't necessarily required. You can have 1 connection string and have them both point to the same database. And those tables, the tables for the users, the AspNetUsers, roles, and all that, they'll get made in the same database as the rest of the stuff. Is there an advantage to having the separate, not having a separate? The answer is yes and no. The answer, yes, being if there's a reason why you want to have the user information in a separate database, because you have multiple applications using the same user management system, yeah. Is not, if you're only building a single application and you want everything in 1 database, there you go. That'd be the reason why you'd put it in 1. I put it in a separate one. It's no big deal for me to move it from 1 database to another and put them all in 1 after the fact, after I've built everything. But more important, what I want to point out to here is that all these fields that you see right here, ID, username, normalized username, those are already built into the AspNet users. That's in the identity model. And all the links that go with user roles, that go with user logins, all of that is built in. That's their identity system. And the beauty of that is that you can easily find, just a little bit of searching, find pages that you can use that will allow you to modify, edit, create, whatever. So that's all stuff that you really don't have to worry about doing a whole lot of coding. And the more coding that you can do using proven code that's already been written to do this stuff, the better. But one thing I do want to point out here is that, remember, I added user bio. I added user bio to the AspNet users. I added it. I extended the model to application user, and I added the field user bio. Now, what I'm going to do in the future is I'm going to add more fields. Because if you note here, I've got email, normalized username, I have phone number, but I have other things that I want to add here. User bio is one of those. Another one I want to add here is address. Now, there is the possibility that you can have multiple user addresses, and in that case, you would actually have to create a dependent table upon that actually has the address, which would have a foreign key to this. That, by the way, dealing with foreign keys, topic of the next video. But for those people using AspNet Core, this is something that you will probably do. The AspNet users the identity model is great. The AspNet users table, there's nothing wrong with that table. But the reality is there's almost always fields that you want to have in your user's system that are not included in these tables. And now you've got a method to go ahead and add those fields and extend it through code first, extend those to the model. So that's where I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to come back in video number 5 with how to add foreign key tables that have dependencies upon these tables here. Thank you very much, and good coding.